They called me trash for giving my lunch to a dirty street kid. The whole mall laughed when security dragged us both out. But when those helicopters landed 30 minutes later, and that billionaire stepped out calling the boy's name, every single person who mocked me went silent. Before I tell you how my entire life changed in one afternoon, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't believe how this story ends, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Nia, and I want to be honest with you from the start. I wasn't living some fairy tale life before this happened. I was 23 years old, working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over my head, and barely managing that. Every morning I'd wake up at 5 to open the coffee shop on Market Street, then rush across town to work the evening shift at a retail store in Riverside Mall. My studio apartment was so small you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. That Saturday started like any other. I'd been saving all week for one thing, a proper meal from the food court. I know that sounds silly to some people, but when you're counting every dollar, when you're choosing between eating and keeping the lights on, a $12 meal becomes something you plan for, something you dream about. I'd been living on rice and beans for 6 straight days, and I was so tired my bones ached. But I'd made it to Saturday, and I had my little reward waiting. The mall was packed that afternoon, full of people carrying shopping bags from stores I couldn't afford to even walk into. I didn't let it bother me, though. I'd learned a long time ago that comparison is a thief of joy. I had my food, I had my 30-minute break, and I was going to enjoy every single bite. That's what I told myself as I walked toward the entrance. That's when I saw him. He was sitting just outside the main doors, tucked against the wall like he was trying to disappear. A little boy, couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with the saddest eyes I'd ever seen. His clothes were torn and filthy, streaked with dirt and who knows what else. His feet were bare, covered in cuts and bruises. But it was his face that stopped me in my tracks. He looked hollow, like the life had been drained right out of him. And he was staring at the food in my hands like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. I should have kept walking. I know that's what most people would have done. I needed that food. I'd earned it. I had my own problems, my own hunger. But there was something about his eyes that reminded me of my little brother Caleb, who we lost when I was 17. That same lost look, that same desperate hope, mixed with fear, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't walk past him. I sat down next to him right there on the concrete, and I asked his name. He whispered it so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Isaiah. I opened my container and offered him half, but the way he looked at that food, I knew half wasn't going to be enough. So I gave him the whole thing, every last bite, and I watched him eat like he hadn't seen food in weeks, maybe longer. I didn't know it then, but that decision was about to change everything. We'd barely been sitting there for 5 minutes when I heard the voice behind me. Deep, authoritative, annoyed. Security guard coming our way. This man named Officer Brooks, who I'd seen around the mall before. He was a big guy, always walking around like he owned the place, and right now he was staring at me and Isaiah like we were committing some kind of crime. "You can't be doing this here," he said, his voice loud enough that people were starting to turn and look. "This is private property. We don't allow homeless people on these premises." I stood up, tried to explain that the boy was hungry, that I was just helping him, but Officer Brooks wasn't trying to hear it. He was talking over me, telling me I was creating a disturbance, that I needed to move along. And that's when the crowd really started to gather. You know how it is. People see any kind of confrontation and they swarm like moths to a flame, phones out, recording, eager for drama they can post online later. And right at the front of that crowd was this woman, Mrs. Thompson. She was dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my entire month's rent, dripping in jewelry, standing there with her friends like she was watching some kind of entertainment. "Oh my God," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some people really have no class at all. Bringing homeless people to the mall? What is this place coming to?" Her friends laughed, actually laughed. And other people in the crowd started joining in, making comments, calling me ignorant, saying I was just making the problem worse by encouraging These people. I felt my face getting hot, felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes, but I held them back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Then it got worse. My manager from the retail store, Mr. Phillips, pushed through the crowd. He recognized me immediately, and the look on his face was pure disgust. He didn't even ask what happened. Didn't want to hear my side. He just started yelling about how I was embarrassing the mall, how I was associated with his store and making them look bad, how customers were complaining. "You're fired," he said, just like that, right there in front of everyone. Effective immediately. We cannot have employees who attract this kind of element to our establishment. I tried to speak, tried to defend myself, but my voice came out as barely a whisper. Meanwhile, Isaiah was terrified, trying to hide behind me, and Officer Brooks grabbed his arm roughly, telling him he had to leave. The boy cried out, and I instinctively stepped between them, which just made everything worse. Mrs. Thompson was recording now, her phone pointed right at my face. "This is what happens when you don't know your place," she said, like she was narrating some kind of documentary. "When you try to be a savior without any resources of your own. It's just pathetic." The crowd was eating it up. More phones out, more recording, more laughter. I could already imagine the videos spreading across social media. People commenting about the stupid girl who lost her job over a homeless kid, making me into some kind of meme or joke. Officer Brooks had us both by the arms now, escorting us toward the exit, and all I could do was hold Isaiah's hand and try to tell him it was going to be okay, even though I had no idea if that was true. They left us outside on the curb, just dumped us there like garbage and went back inside. Through the glass doors, I could see people still watching, still laughing, phones still recording. I sat down on that curb, and Isaiah sat next to me, and for a moment we just existed in this bubble of complete humiliation and despair. I had $12 in my pocket. $12 to my name, no job, rent due in a week, and no idea how I was going to survive. I'd lost everything for giving a child some food, everything. And the worst part was, I couldn't even regret it. Looking at Isaiah's face, seeing him a little less hollow than before, I knew I'd make the same choice again, even if it cost me everything. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes, neither of us really talking, just existing in our shared shame. And then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong, that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The heavy thump of helicopter blades cutting through the air. I looked up, and I swear to you, I thought I was hallucinating. One helicopter appeared over the mall, then another, then a third. Massive, expensive-looking machines that seemed to shake the very air around us. They were circling lower, heading for the parking lot, and suddenly, everyone was coming back outside. The same people who'd just been mocking us, the same crowd that had recorded our humiliation, they were all running toward the parking lot to see what was happening. The helicopters landed, and I'm not exaggerating when I say the entire mall came to a standstill. Cars stopped moving, people poured out of stores, it was absolute chaos. Everyone trying to get close, security trying to hold them back, and then the doors of the first helicopter opened, and a man stepped out. He was older, maybe in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than I'd earned in the last 6 months. He was surrounded by security personnel, at least a dozen of them, creating a protective barrier. But what struck me was his face. He looked frantic, desperate, his eyes scanning the crowd like he was searching for something specific, something precious. People in the crowd were recognizing him, whispers spreading like wildfire. "That's Samuel Okoye! Oh my God, that's Samuel Okoye!" I'd heard the name before, seen it in the news. One of the richest black men in the country, a pharmaceutical billionaire worth billions with a capital B, the kind of person who existed in a completely different universe from people like me. And he was moving through the crowd with purpose, his security team clearing a path, and he was calling a name. Over and over, loud and desperate. "Isaiah! Isaiah!" I felt the boy next to me go rigid, felt his whole body start to shake. And then, before I could process what was happening, he was standing up and he was crying and he was yelling back, "Grandpa!" Everything after that happened so fast it felt like a dream. Samuel Okoye broke into a run, his security team struggling to keep up, and he dropped to his knees right there on that curb and pulled Isaiah into his arms. He was crying, actually crying. This billionaire was sobbing as he held this dirty, traumatized child, saying, "Thank God, thank God, thank God," over and over like a prayer. The crowd had gone completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was just staring, trying to understand what they were witnessing. And then Mr. Okoye was checking Isaiah over, looking at his injuries, his bare feet, his dirty clothes, and his face was transforming from relief into something else, something harder, anger. He stood up slowly, still holding Isaiah's hand, and he turned to face the crowd. When he spoke, his voice carried across that parking lot like thunder. "This is my grandson," he said. "He was kidnapped 3 weeks ago, taken from us during a trip to the city. There's been a nationwide search, FBI involvement, a $5 million reward for information. He's been missing for 21 days. You could feel the energy in the crowd shift. People were pulling out their phones, not to mock now, but to search, to verify. And sure enough, there it was. News articles, Amber Alerts, his face on missing posters. Isaiah Okoye, missing child, grandson of billionaire Samuel Okoye. "He was here," Mr. Okoye continued, his voice shaking with emotion. "My grandson was here in this mall for 3 days, and you people walked past him, you ignored him, you saw a child in need and you did nothing." He turned, and his eyes landed on me, still sitting on that curb in shock. Isaiah was pulling his hand, pointing at me, saying something I couldn't hear. Mr. Okoye walked over, his security team parting to let him through, and he stood in front of me. "You," he said quietly. "My grandson says you gave him food, that you were kind to him when everyone else treated him like he was invisible." I couldn't speak, couldn't even nod. I just stared up at this man who existed in a world so far from mine we might as well have been on different planets. He turned back to the crowd, and now his voice was sharp, cutting. "Where were all of you?" he demanded. "Where was your compassion? Your humanity?" His eyes found Mrs. Thompson in the crowd, and she actually stepped back like she'd been struck. "You," he said, pointing at her, "you mocked this woman. You recorded her humiliation for entertainment. She showed my grandson more kindness in 5 minutes than you've probably shown anyone in your entire privileged life." Mrs. Thompson tried to speak, tried to stammer out an apology, but Mr. Okoye wasn't done. He spotted Officer Brooks at the edge of the crowd. You put your hands on my grandson. You threw out the only person who helped him. You're fired, effective immediately." "Sir, I didn't know," Brooks started, but Mr. Okoye cut him off. "Exactly. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You saw a child in need and your first instinct was to remove him like he was trash." He was on his phone now, calling someone. "Get me the owner of this mall, now." Turns out the mall owner was one of his business partners. Within minutes, calls were being made. Officer Brooks was escorted off the property. Mr. Phillips, my former manager, was also fired, just like that. The same swift, merciless justice they'd shown me now turned back on them. The videos that people had posted earlier, the ones mocking me, they were being shared again now, but with completely different context. The comments were changing from ridicule to outrage, people condemning everyone who'd participated in my humiliation. It was surreal, watching my worst moment transform into something else entirely in real time. Mr. Okoye came back to me, and he knelt down so we were at eye level. "How can I ever repay you?" he asked, and there were tears in his eyes again. "You saved my grandson's life. You gave him hope when he had none left. You're the reason he survived these last 3 days. How do I repay something like that?" I finally found my voice, though it came out shaky. "I didn't do it for a reward," I said. "I just saw a child who needed help. Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," he said softly. "Hundreds of people saw him. Thousands walked past. You were the only one who stopped, the only one who cared. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you are." He stood up and offered me his hand, helping me to my feet. "What's your name?" he asked. Nia, I whispered. Nia, he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. Today you lost your job because you chose kindness over convenience. You sacrificed your own needs to help a child you didn't know. That kind of character is rare, precious, and I promise you, your life is about to change in ways you can't even imagine. I didn't understand what he meant then. I was still in shock, still trying to process everything that had happened. But as his security team ushered us toward the helicopters, as Isaiah held my hand and refused to let go, as I looked back at that crowd of people who'd mocked me now standing in stunned silence, I felt something shift inside me. Something fundamental. That day changed my entire life. But before I tell you exactly what Mr. Okoye did for me and how my story ends, I need you to do something. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have given up your meal? Would you have stopped to help? And subscribe, because the next part of this story, what happened in the weeks that followed, will blow your mind. Remember, kindness is never wasted. It always comes back to you, sometimes in ways you never imagined. Sometimes when you help someone at your lowest point, the universe has a way of lifting you higher than you ever dreamed possible. I'll see you in the next video.